Well, everyone's on the Caucasian caucus right now in Iowa for whatever it's worth. What are you going to do if the crackpot Paul wins and Romney comes in third? I mean, what are you going to do if the crackpot Paul wins? Can you imagine Paul? Look, let's move forward. All of you who love Ron Paul's ideas, or at least some of them, I want to take you to the general election. On the stage left, you have a young, good-looking black man, Barack Hussein Obama, who the people are familiar with somewhat. We're talking about the average person, not the skilled, intelligent, thoughtful voter, the average person. On the right, you have a spindly, crazy old man who's kind of a curiosity and cute, makes funny little statements about the Federal Reserve and foreign aid. By what percentage does Obama win? Is it 70-30 or is it 80-20? Do you have any idea what you're doing here? Haven't you any idea that you're just giving Obama, perhaps he'll become president for life if you run Ron Paul. The Republican brand will be ruined forever. I mean, we've had sound bites of Ron Paul that would put a talk show host to shame. If Ron Paul were on radio, he probably would have lost his radio show for the things he has said. And that's, that's one thing, but this is the end of the Republican Party as you know it. The Democrats will win for the next 100 years if this man is the candidate. Haven't you any idea what's going on? Okay, go ahead. Keep playing with fire because that's what's going to happen. There's no greater statement that I can make than what I've already said. Ron Paul is not only unelectable, he will destroy the Republican brand forever. All right, let's take your callers. Barbara in New York on WOR. Go ahead, please.
Michael, it won't make any difference if Obama wins or not because all the Republican candidates are the same. And you know, the only candidate, the deranged Ron Paul, is the only one who has spoken out against not only NDAA, but against SOPA, Stop Online Piracy Act. He spoke out against the Patriot Act years ago. He's the only one warning about the fascism and the oppression coming to America, and he's been right. And let me...
Well, he is... hold on. He is right, but he's unelectable.
You supported John McCain 4 years ago, and who is the author of...
Whoa. Hold on a minute. Wait, stop. You wanted me to support Obama?
No. I want you to support the candidate that supports the Constitution, and it doesn't...
Wait. Don't get hysterical, please. It's one thing to say the man has some good ideas and some crazy ideas. It's another thing to be a realist and ask yourself, could he beat Obama? You don't really believe that he could beat Obama, do you?
Obama. That's where you're wrong. You think nutcase Newt can beat Obama? You think that?
No. When did I say? Wait, ma'am, stop. You're sounding. You sound like you're hysterical. You're sounding just like Ron Paul. Why are all the Ron Paul addicts so hysterical? I'd like to know.
Because they care about this country and they're tired.
You mean only you care about the country? I don't care about the country. You care more than I do.
You don't. But let me just say this. The Republicans are no different from the Democrats. Not one of them has spoken out against NDAA or SOPA or the Patriot Act. They're all for going over and bombing all over.
Well, you're wrong. When you say none of them have spoken out, what do you mean? None of the Republican senators?
None of the Republican candidates have spoken out against NDAA except for Ron Paul.
Okay, on this point you are correct, but that still does not make the crackpot electable.
He's not a crackpot, Michael. He's been saying things that you agree with, but
really?
Somehow
he's been saying things I agree. You mean I agree that Israel should be annihilated and disappeared off the planet like he does?
Say that, Michael, and you know, come on, you're smarter than most of the people who listen to your show.
What do you mean? You want me to play the soundbite? I will be happy to play the soundbite of Ron Paul basically calling for Israel's non-existence.
No, he's not. And he's the only one. Let me remind you, in 1980 or 81, when Israel bombed the nuclear power plant in Iran, you know, the only one who supported Israel was Ron Paul, because Ron Paul believes that Israel should take care of herself. She should have the right to defend herself without any kind of overseer by the United States.
That's all well and good, but where's Israel supposed to get its arms from, since all of its weaponry is American?
Hey,
other than the domestically manufactured material, where's Israel supposed to get its munitions from? The bunker-busting bombs that it has come from the United States of America, so that's a moot point to say Israel should defend itself. Without weapons, it can't defend itself.
It's got plenty of weapons, Michael, and you know it. It's got more weapons probably than we do by now. And they do a damn pretty good job of defending themselves. Remember the raid on Entebbe? They do very well.
Entebbe was a long time ago. That's when they had real leadership in Israel before the people with Saks Fifth Avenue charge accounts in New York took over the country. That's before the Russians came to Israel. That's when Israel was still Israel. Israel's a shell of its former self.
And it's up to Israel to get its own leadership, like it's up to the United States to get its leadership that's authorized by the Constitution and restore.
I agree with you, but you're still not answering the fundamental question, Barbara, because I think you're blinded with passion, which in some ways is a good thing, but also you don't have the long vision. I'm trying to bring you up to a final debate between Ron Paul and Barack Obama. Now, forget the ideas. Do you understand that many elections are based upon looks rather than on substance?
Michael, I don't care. I've been voting since 1972, and I voted for George McGovern because he was anti-war. So it's not like I'm naive, and I just was born
So you're
yesterday.
confirming what I suspect, that most people who support Ron Paul are dyed-in-the-wool liberals.
I'm not a liberal, Michael.
Well, what would you say? What would you say McGovern was?
I'm an American who believes.
Well, now you're parsing words. Most supporters of Ron Paul are diehard liberals, only they confuse themselves into thinking that they're libertarians.
Not true, Michael. And if you want to find...
Are you by any chance a Unitarian religious-wise?
No, I'm Jewish, Michael. I'm Jewish.
No, the reason I ask is because many libertarians are simply liberals who are Unitarian, and they don't even understand that.
I'm Jewish, and I'm a constitutionalist, and I believe in this country.
Look, I respect your opinion. I respect your right to have an opinion on Ron Paul. He's unelectable, though, because I understand the American public probably as well, if not better than most. I'm telling you, you put this crackpot on the stage and Obama on the other side of the stage. It's a landslide for Obama.
I disagree with you, Michael.
All right, we can disagree as friends. As my father's store had a little sign in it that said, "Don't go away, Mayor, just go away." That's the sign that hangs over the microphone here in the Savage Studio. It doesn't say, "Don't go away, Mayor, just go away." He had that little sign in his antique store. I used to love that sign. I'll be right back, right here on the Savage Nation, to talk about the Caucasian Caucus in Iowa. I wouldn't be surprised if the lunatic Ron Paul wins tonight. In fact, I would expect it. It's to be expected. I expect that the lunatic will win. If you'd like me to, I can play some of the Ron Paul pieces for you to know what you're in for. He has destroyed the Republican brand. Unless he is put on an ice floe as soon as possible, it will be the end of the Republican Party for about 50 years, because the opposition would use Ron Paul's sound bites to take all of the wavering independents and chase them away from moving over to the Republican side. They'll be afraid of this party forever when you listen to Ron Paul. So what we have to do here is, I guess I have to wake you up to who the man actually is. You know, he seems like a cantankerous, bright guy, and he's right about certain things and wrong about others, just like any human being. But you have to listen to some of this. So let's start with his own insider and listen to what he had to say about Ron Paul.
He was ranting and raving. He honestly believed that that Muhammad Atta had nothing to do with this, or was at least a pawn of the CIA, or it wasn't Islamic terrorists that attacked us. That somehow, some way, the CIA was behind it. And he ran it to me personally. He ran it to Tom Lizardo, the chief of staff, and I got to tell you that our district staff, we had our jaws dropped. We were like, I cannot believe this. This is a guy we work for. He thinks that Israel is just a burden on the U.S. taxpayer, and that it's more trouble than it's worth. And he sides with the Palestinians. I mean, he thinks that they're justified and not only taking over the West Bank and Gaza, but just in all of Israel.
Well, now that sentiment, by the way, is not limited to Ron Paul. The fact is, this is a sentiment that is rife in liberal circles or so-called progressive circles. In that sense, Ron Paul would be an ideal progressive candidate, if you want to use the word progressive when what you really mean is regressive. But nevertheless, Ron Paul is by no means a conservative. Almost everything he espouses is hardcore liberalism, and it's very confusing for people. So I think that we have to go to the man himself for a few other sound bites. Bay, we'll play him away. Go ahead.
Just think of how many nuclear weapons surround Iran. The Chinese are there, the Indians are there, the Pakistanis are there, the Israelis are there, the United States is there. All these countries. China has nuclear weapons. Why wouldn't it be natural that they might want a weapon? Internationally, they'd be given more respect. We know that...
Hold on, stop for a minute. That's old Ron Paul arguing for Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon, without understanding that there's a difference between a nation owning a nuclear weapon or many nuclear weapons and a nation who has avowedly said that when they get a nuclear weapon, they will wipe Israel off the planet. I don't think he understands that there's a difference between knowing your enemy and sympathizing with your enemy. In that sense, his boundaries don't exist, and in that sense, he is deranged. He is a deranged individual. In other words, even a deranged individual can think, but he thinks in a deranged fashion, and his boundaries are blurred. I think this is what I've been trying to get across to you. Even deranged people make sense sometimes. I truly believe Ron Paul is deranged.
It is helpful for people who have cancer and are getting chemotherapy. So this is not a great, a huge radical idea. It's something that was legal.
The potheads love him. All the potheads, the deranged potheads who think that their thinking is clearer than it was before they used the most dangerous drug on earth, the gateway drug, tetrahydrocannabinol, and the other associated toxins that are in THC. Marijuana smoke is far more toxic than cigarette smoke, but don't tell that to the potheads. They're convinced that it's from nature and therefore it's natural, it must be good. This is an old argument, of course. I can point out to you that there are many natural substances that can harm you or kill you. But again, you can't argue with drug addicts. And make no mistake about it, marijuana is a very dangerous drug precisely because many people have been led to believe that it is a benign drug. It isn't. It's a gateway drug on top of it all. There is another element to this legalization business that you have to face, which is that none other than George Soros spent millions upon millions of dollars in an attempt to legalize marijuana, in Arizona and in California many years ago. About 10 years ago. So there's no difference in Ron Paul's stance on marijuana than that of George Soros. There's no difference in Ron Paul's stance on Iran getting a nuclear weapon and that of Al-Qaeda. There's no difference in Ron Paul's stance on Israel and that of the most far left, let us say, Bill Ayers bomb thrower type. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more of Ron Paul, I'm afraid you're going to hear a lot more of Ron Paul, because if he should win the Caucasian caucus, it's only going to begin. And by the way, Barack Obama must be sitting back with his feet up enjoying a pineapple pizza tonight as he watches. If I were them and I had just come back from Hawaii and I watched this Caucasian caucus ongoing, this charade, and I see that this nut is liable to win, and I realize that this guy's sound bites are like made for television, I can't tell you what this is doing for them. They're probably going to go on another vacation very soon if he should win. So before we take a quick commercial break, let's go for a few more of the wit and wisdom of Ron Paul here on the Savage Nation.
The real motivation behind the September 11th attacks and the vast majority of other instances of suicide terrorism is not that our enemies are bothered by our way of life. Neither is it our religion or our wealth. Rather, it is primarily occupation. If you were to imagine for a moment...
Let's stop right there. So here he is espousing the equivalent of the big lie. Here he is espousing the equivalent of Henry Ford's the universal Jew. Here he is espousing the biggest lie of the century, which is that all of radical Islam is excited around the world because of the Jews. Well, Mr. Paul, how do you explain the bombings in Bali? Can you blame that on the Jews of Israel? No, I guess not. And Mr. Paul, how do you explain the bombings in Mumbai, where so many people who were Hindus and of Indians, rather, they were killed? They had nothing to do with Israel, Ron. I guess you could blame it on Jews somehow if you wanted to stretch things and you wanted to believe in the protocol of the Elders of Zion, Ron. I suppose that might be one of your campaign treatises. Adolf had his book Mein Kampf, and you could get the protocols of the Elders of Zion